I know I need to strength train as I get older, but I don't know what to do. As a personal trainer and a fitness professional for over 20 years, this is the most common thing I hear from women, especially women in perimenopause and beyond. Today, I'm going to share with you 4 areas to focus on to protect your bones and build your muscle health as you age. Before we jump in, let's be real honest. You probably don't need another fitness professional telling you that you need to strength train. You probably already know this. What I have found is women are very well aware of this, even if they are not doing any kind of resistance training. And that's because they are feeling overwhelmed. They are unsure of what to do. They don't know proper form. They don't want to hurt themselves even more. They may be working around other areas that already hurt and they don't want to hurt those more, or they don't want to, like I said, injure something else. And there's just so much information out there that they don't really know how to put it all together. And so when that happens, it's like there's just so much and you just get frozen. You get stuck because you don't know what to do. What I want to do today is cover 4 different areas that are very helpful and very beneficial to focus on as we are getting older, particularly as it relates to our bone health and strengthening the muscles around those areas so that those bones can be as strong as possible. If you missed last week, go back and listen to that, particularly if you are one of the people who like to know the why behind why people are telling you to strength train. It gets a little sciencey, but I think you might be interested in understanding how strength training relates to having strong bone health. Today, I want to talk about 4 different areas that deserve our attention as we get older. 3 of them are the 3 most vulnerable to break as we are getting older, particularly if you have osteoporosis or osteopenia. Also, guess what? We can still break bones when we have strong bones. Who broke their bone as a child? I know I did. I still have a crooked finger. If you have ever seen me on YouTube and you see me holding up my left hand, that crooked joint on my pointer finger is because I broke it trying to do a handspring in 8th grade, 2 months before my 9th grade cheerleading tryouts. So needless to say, that created a lot of panic in my house. However, the bone healed, maybe not super great, but it's usable. It just doesn't look very pretty. So I'm not saying that if you break a bone, it's because you have weak bones if you are in menopause or beyond, because we still break bones. However, if you have this intention of like, okay, I want to prevent it as much as possible, but I'm not quite sure what to do, then I want today's episode to equip you with some very specific movements that you can do at home with very minimal equipment so you can start strengthening those muscles that surround the vulnerable areas and just do what will help your bone health. If I was speaking with you collectively as a group and it was a small enough room that I could get feedback, I would probably say, who thinks they know the most vulnerable area in the body that can break as we get older, especially as women? And I would probably get a lot of hands, and those hands would probably say something like hips. And those people would be correct. Our hips are highly vulnerable. And I say hips, that's just a region. The technical term really is lumbo-pelvic hip complex because we have a lot of bones that are in that hip region. So I'll say hips because it's a lot easier than saying lumbo-pelvic hip complex every time I say it. But that just so you know, that's what I mean by that. The statistics on hip fractures in women are really scary. In older women, 20 to 30% of people who suffer a hip fracture die within 1 year of the injury. I hate giving statistics like that because that is very scary. And I know a lot of you in my community have elderly parents and they fall. They can absolutely fall. And I know that that is one of the reasons why we are doing what we're doing is so we can stay strong and stay mobile for as long as possible. We want to avoid those hip fractures just as much as possible. Research shows that hip strength, or the muscles in that hip area, studies find that there is a 40% reduced fall risk in older adults with stronger hip musculature. So good news, you can work on building your muscles, and it is never too late to work on your strength training, and that can help drastically reduce our propensity to fall, but also those bones breaking, because as we learned in the last episode, that means that when we have strength trained, those osteoblasts have been building up the bone. Also, when we have weak muscles around those hip areas, that is linked with other issues that can go along with it. So that can be lower back pain, that could be knee pain, that can be altered gait patterns. And what I mean by that is maybe you have a little, not necessarily a limp, but maybe you land harder on one side than the other. Maybe you sway more to one side than the other. It's when our walking does not have that symmetry that we want. And as we discussed, when we strength train and we have that resistance coming from our muscles through our tendons to our bones, then we are creating those little micro tears, not only in our muscles to rebuild, but also in our bones, which will activate those osteoblasts. Again, if you haven't listened to last week's episode, go listen to that. So the muscles surrounding our hips are really important to be focusing on for our hip health, if you want to call it that, to help reduce the risk of fractures, because we do not want to fall. And if you're thinking, okay, so what do I do? Well, good news. I have a free download for you that has 4 exercises that you can add in to strengthen the hip musculature, those muscles around your hips. And they also include a demo video. So you can get that over at gracedhealth.com/essentials. And I actually have exercises for all 4 of these areas that I'm talking about today. When you print it off, you'll have a QR code, and that QR code will take you to a video that will demo these movements for you. This one download covers all 4 areas, and you get not only movements, but demo videos with all of these movements as well. Let's talk about another vulnerable area. And probably if we were in that same room and I asked another question of like, okay, we covered our hips, what else do you think? You would probably raise your hand, and I would probably get several answers like our spine, which would also be correct. So you have heard these things, right? Like you have heard the importance of preventing falls so we don't break our hips. You have heard the importance of taking care of our spine so we can stay upright and we can prevent curvature and poor posture, which can cause other problems on its own. So let's talk about strengthening the spine. The National Osteoporosis Foundation reports that approximately 25% of postmenopausal women experience vertebral fractures, which also is really scary. So that's getting a little fracture in your vertebrae, in the small bones that go up and down the spine. So even though we may not think about like, oh, I'm breaking my back, this actually can happen in more cases than you realize. I mean, 25% is not a small amount. Also, as we age, we are vulnerable to something called kyphosis, which is also referred to as like that dowager's hump. It's kind of that hump that's right at the base of your neck. And that I'm actually thinking about doing an episode on that in particular, because there is some in my communities of other menopause focused strength coaches. There's been a lot of conversation about that lately. So stay tuned. We'll talk about that later. But that is also a side effect of aging, where we start to get that little hump and we lose that natural spine alignment that we want to have. What we can do is we can strength train specifically the muscles that go up and down our spine, like the erector spinae and the multifidus. Both of those go the length of your spine, not the full length, but most of the length. So those are vertical and they go up and down. When we strength train our core and those 2 muscles, that can help with preventing the spinal loss and the spinal degradation that we see, as well as those vertebrae fractures. When we strengthen our core, that can also help with chronic low back pain, which I know a lot of women get. And actually, the Journal of Physical Therapy Science shows that core strengthening can reduce chronic low back pain by 30 to 40% in menopausal women. Now, I have to add in my own personal story. Some of you know that I have been dealing with some low back pain for a while, and I have tried a lot of different things. I actually had an episode on several weeks ago about chronic pain and the brain and the way that our thoughts can influence this. But also, from a physiological standpoint, I had some things that needed to be worked on. And one of them, I'm kind of embarrassed to admit, but I'm nothing but honest on here. And one of those was my core had gotten weaker. I don't really know how, but I think I had focused on other things. And so I had laxed on my core strengthening training. I have been going to an exercise therapist who has been identifying some weak areas for me. One of them being specifically my transverse abdominis and my core muscles. We've been working on strengthening those, and lo and behold, things are getting better. A lot of things are going into play here for me, but I can tell you that strengthening my core definitely has helped. Yes, my thoughts have helped. Also, getting to the physiological aspects of what was weak and what needed strengthened, that has helped as well. So core strengthening can help particularly your lower back, but it also helps support your back. Remember, your core, it goes basically from the bottom of your bra line to the bottom of your rear. So it is like, depending on how you count, between 20 and 27 different muscles. That includes your core, and that will help support your back and your spine as well. Also, any kind of pulling exercise is going to activate those muscles. The resistance will get those muscles strained, as well as pulling the muscle, and then the tendon attaches the muscle to the bone, pulling that, which will activate those osteoblasts. So pulling muscles as well are very, very, very important to the spine. I will say this again in a later episode, but I have a special plea for those of you out there who love riding your Peloton or indoor cycling bike. I want you to continue doing that. I want you to do what you love doing. However, if you are hunched over a lot and doing a lot of your exercise hunched over on your bike, then please get this free download. It's very simple, and start integrating just a few of these pulling exercises so you can counteract that bending over that you're doing on your bike. Again, I'm not telling you not to do it. I'm just asking you to add these few things in. It's not much. These are not huge workouts. These are just specific movements that you can do to help strengthen our vulnerable areas, and pulling is one of them. The third most vulnerable area is our wrist. That's because our balance declines as we age, and if we trip and fall, more than likely we're reaching out our hand to catch ourselves, and guess what our hand does? It stops, and then the wrist can break. Postmenopausal women actually have a 2 to 4 times higher risk of wrist fractures due to those declining estrogen levels that affect our bone density. Also, interesting research has come out lately that grip strength is a reliable biomarker of overall health and longevity. It's funny, I remember growing up, my dad used to have these, it kind of looked like a triangle with a circle, but he would like pull it, they were like grip strengthening. I don't even know what it was. Like, I'm sure they still exist, but I thought it was the most bizarre thing. But turns out, Dad, you were on it. You were way ahead of your time with working on that grip strength. And as I'm speaking, I'm wondering, like, what in the world was he even trying to strengthen his grip for? But whatever, it still worked and he was doing it. But something like that, which is not on the download, but if you have one of those laying around from years ago or years gone by, or maybe you just want to get one, then that's a really great thing too, to strengthen up that grip strength. Also, when we strengthen our wrist and we have these little wrist strengthening exercises, that can help with our fine motor skills in our hands, because those will commonly decline as we age as well. There are a lot of different things that you can do to strengthen your wrist. In my opinion, one of the greatest things we can do is start to pull using resistance bands. bands and resistance loops. When we pull with these loops and bands and we keep strong wrists and we don't let them pop up or pop down, which is very easy to do and women are prone to do, then we are strengthening those muscles around our wrists. Plus, you get a 2-for-1 because not only are you working on your wrist, but you're also working on that spine. When done properly, using resistance bands, using resistance loops can really help with not only your wrists, but also your spine as well. And absolutely, if you are using dumbbells in your workouts, then there is no harm in that. The reason that I like the bands and loops is because they're going to be pulling on that a little more. And so you have to use your wrist to counteract that. Whereas a dumbbell is not necessarily going to pull on that wrist. You're going to have easier alignment in your wrist. Like I did not grow up doing cheerleading. I did cheerleading 1 year and I barely made the team. But a big thing in cheerleading was like no broken wrists. So you didn't want your wrist popping up. You didn't want your wrist going down. You wanted your wrist in nice neutral alignment. And your dumbbells are going to naturally keep that wrist in neutral alignment. Bands and loops, on the other hand, because the resistance is coming from the other way, is going to make those wrists want to go broken back or broken forward. And so that's why I really like using those with respect to our wrist health. And of course, any kind of resistance is good for our spine as well. The fourth area is our pelvic floor. This is a muscular related area, not necessarily a bone. However, any woman who's ever had pelvic floor dysfunction will tell you that it's a real thing. It is a thing when you have to cross your legs before you sneeze or before you cough, or if you are laughing, or if you don't make it to the bathroom because there's look, this is a real thing. And we've talked about this. Actually, two of my favorite people in this industry are Jen Lormond and Christina Walsh with Tighten Your Tinkler. They've been on twice, and I think I've laughed more with them than I have with any other guest. They're so fun. They're so smart and knowledgeable, and I love their Tighten Your Tinkler program. If you have pelvic floor dysfunction, and research says that 50% of us do, then their program is a great one to do it. I will have the link in the show notes. Full disclosure, I am an affiliate for them. I'm an affiliate for them because I've used the program, because I like the program. I trust them. They are so good. And I am very protective of my community and whom I send them to. I trust them with you. And I would not be an affiliate if I didn't believe in the program. But just so you know, because I feel like that's the morally the right thing to say, is I am an affiliate for them, but that's only because I've done the program and I like it. But you can still work on your pelvic floor without doing their program. Theirs is significantly more comprehensive than mine. But if you just want to start out, if you just want to kind of play around with it, I do have a few exercises on that download for you to do. There are randomized controlled trials that say that pelvic floor muscle training can reduce urinary incontinence by 70% in many women. And if you tinkle when you're jumping around, you're not alone. It is common, but it's not normal. And that is something that I have learned in my little path and my journey of doing all of this Graced Healthing and having amazing women like Jen and Christina on. Also, a stronger pelvic floor is correlated with improved sexual function and satisfaction. So if that is something that can maybe use a little bit of attention, then maybe pay some attention to your pelvic floor muscles. The other thing that research says that proper pelvic floor engagement provides is just overall core stability and functional movement patterns. As a personal trainer, I do my programming based on the 6 functional movements of exercise: push, pull, squat, hinge, single leg, and then some people say a carry, some people say rotational. So I just kind of use both of those. But that is how I program all of my training for my clients and also for myself. When we have a strong pelvic floor that helps us do those functional movements. Again, I have several exercises for you in the download that you can get started with. And if you want more, definitely go check out Tighten Your Tinkler, and the link to that is in the show notes. So, in summary, the four essential areas that we want to focus on as we age are our hips, our spine, our wrists, and our pelvic floor. And I have that free download for you. You can print it out, then you can have the QR code that will take you directly to the videos where I demonstrate those movements for you so you can start incorporating those into your day. Maybe you just do one per day. Maybe you want to go through all of them. I mean, you can make your own workout out of them. Again, like I said, this does not include all of the movements that we want to be doing because this does not include all 6 of those functional movements. I will have a resource for that later. However, if you want to start prioritizing where you focus, these are the areas to focus on to get stronger for better bone health, for better muscular health. You can get that download over at gracedhealth.com/essentials, and that will get you on your way to doing the essential strength training to support your overall health as you get older. That is all for today. Go out there and have a graced day.